There's a doctor in San Francisco pulling in $400,000 a year. She drives a leased BMW, lives in a nice apartment, eats out 4 times a week, and she has less than $8,000 in her savings account. Meanwhile, there's a plumber in Ohio making $62,000. He drives a 10-year-old truck, packs his lunch, lives in a house he bought in cash, and he just hit his second million, same country, same decade, completely different financial realities. And the gap between them? It is almost nothing to do with how much money they make. Because here's the part nobody tells you when you're climbing the ladder, chasing promotions, negotiating raises. A good salary is not a wealth-building tool. It's a simulation of one. And once you see how the system actually works, you can't unsee it. Let's start with something simple. When most people think about getting rich, they think about income. More money coming in equals more wealth, right? That's the logic. That's what we're taught. Work hard, get promoted, earn more, repeat. And on paper, it makes perfect sense. Except that's not how wealth works. Wealth isn't about what you earn. It's about what you keep, what you own, and what generates returns without your labor. Income is just the starting line. And for most people, it's also the finish line. Because here's the quiet truth that runs underneath the entire economy. The tax code, the financial system, the way corporations structure compensation, none of it is designed to turn high earners into wealthy people. It's designed to keep them earning. Let's look at the numbers. The median household income in the United States is around $75,000 a year. Now let's say you're doing well, really well. You're a software engineer in Seattle. You make $200,000. You're in the top 10% of earners in the country. You've made it. Except, after federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, Medicare, you're taking home around $130,000. $70,000 just disappeared. And that's before you pay rent, before the car payment, before student loans, before health insurance, before childcare, before you buy groceries or fix the transmission or replace the water heater. Suddenly, that $200,000 doesn't feel like $200,000 anymore. It feels like $75,000. And here's the kicker. The higher you climb on the salary ladder, the more the system takes. You go from making $200,000 to $300,000? Congratulations. Your marginal tax rate just jumped. Your deductions phased out. Your effective rate is now pushing 40% in some states. You're running faster. And the treadmill just got steeper. Now, let's talk about the wealthy. Not high earners, the actual wealthy. The people who show up on balance sheets, not payroll systems. Their income often surprisingly low. In 2018, ProPublica analyzed the tax returns of the richest Americans. People like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett. Know what their average income tax rate was between 2014 and 2018? 3.4%. Not 34. 3.4. Some years, they paid nothing. How? Because they don't make their money from salaries. They make it from assets, stocks, real estate, businesses they own, and assets are taxed completely differently. When your wealth comes from ownership, you don't pay taxes until you sell. And even when you do sell, you pay capital gains tax, not income tax. Long-term capital gains? Capped at 20% federally. Income tax at the top bracket? 37%, and that's just federal. So while the doctor in San Francisco is paying 42% on her last dollar earned, the billionaire is paying 15% on his first $10 million in gains. If he pays anything at all. But it gets weirder. Let's say you're wealthy and you need cash. You don't want to sell your stock because that triggers a taxable event. So what do? You borrow against it. It's called a securities-backed loan or a portfolio line of credit. You put up your stock as collateral, and a bank gives you a loan at 1 or 2% interest. You spend that money. You live off it. And it's not income, so it's not taxed. You just turned your wealth into liquidity without ever triggering a tax bill. And when you die, your heirs get what's called a step-up in basis. That means the stock you bought for $10 and that's now worth $10 million, the IRS treats it like your heirs bought it at $10 million. All that gain vanishes. Legally, completely. The wealth transfers, the taxes don't. It's not a loophole, it's the design. Now, let's go back to the high earner. She can't do any of that. She doesn't own a portfolio large enough to borrow against. She doesn't have asset appreciation. She doesn't have a step up in basis waiting at the end. What she has is a paycheck, and every 2 weeks, the government takes its cut before the money even hits her account. She can't defer it. She can't borrow against it. She can't pass it down tax-free. Her wealth-building tool is income, and income is the most inefficient, most heavily taxed form of money in the entire system. So she does what everyone in her position does. She spends it, not recklessly, just normally. She rents a nicer place, buys a nicer car, goes on nicer vacations. Because what else is she supposed to do? She's making $400,000. She's supposed to feel rich, and the economy is built to make sure she does. This is where it gets psychological. There's a phenomenon called lifestyle inflation. You make more, so you spend more. It sounds obvious, but it's more insidious than that, because spending isn't just about consumption, it's about signaling. When you're a high earner, you're expected to look like one. The clothes, the neighborhood, the car, you're surrounded by other high earners, and they're all doing the same thing. It's not peer pressure exactly. It's social calibration. You're not trying to impress people, you're trying to fit in, and fitting in is expensive. A study from 2019 found that people who earn between $200,000 and $250,000 saved, on average, less than 8% of their income. People making $75,000 saved about the same percentage. The difference? The $75,000 earner saved $5,000 or $6,000 a year. The $200,000 earner saved $16,000. More in absolute terms, but proportionally, almost identical. The rest? Gone. Lifestyle. Haha, here's the irony. The more you make, the more you're told you deserve to spend. You worked hard, you earned this. Treat yourself. And that narrative is everywhere. Luxury brands target high earners. Premium services target high earners. Even credit card companies know the best customer isn't someone who can't pay. It's someone who can, barely. Someone who makes enough to service the debt but not enough to pay it off. That's the sweet spot. And high earners live right in it. They finance the car. They carry a mortgage way bigger than they need. They float a balance on a rewards card, not because they're bad with money, but because the system is built to absorb exactly what they make. The salary goes up. The expenses rise to meet it. And the gap between income and wealth, that stays the same, or it gets wider. Let's talk about retirement for a second. Most high earners assume they're set. They're maxing out their 401k. They've got a Roth IRA, maybe a brokerage account. They're doing everything right, except they're still not building wealth the way they think they are, because retirement accounts are tax-deferred, not tax-free. You put money in now, and you don't pay taxes on it. Great, but when you retire and start pulling it out, you pay income tax at whatever rate exists 30 years from now, which might be higher than it is today, so you're not avoiding taxes. You're postponing them and hoping the rate is lower later. That's not a strategy, that's a bet. Meanwhile, the wealthy, they're not funding retirement accounts. They're buying cash-flowing real estate. They're investing in private businesses. They're building equity, things that generate returns now, appreciate over time, and get taxed at lower rates. Things that aren't locked up until they're 65. The high earner is saving for retirement. The wealthy are building assets that make retirement optional. Let's zoom out. Why does this happen? Why is the system structured this way? Part of it is historical. The income tax was introduced in 1913. It was designed to tax the rich. The original top rate applied only to people making over $11 million in today's money, less than 1% of the population. But over time, the tax base expanded. The brackets crept down. The middle class and upper middle class got pulled in. And the truly wealthy, they restructured. They moved their money out of salaries and into ownership. They hired accountants and lawyers who knew the code better than the people who wrote it. And the system adapted around them, not by closing loopholes, but by creating new ones. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The tax code isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. It taxes labor heavily. And it taxes capital lightly. That's not a bug. That's the framework. Now, let's get specific. Imagine two people, both 30 years old, Person A is a lawyer, makes $300,000 a year. Person B is a real estate investor, makes $80,000 a year in rental income. Person A pays roughly $100,000 in taxes. Person B pays maybe $12,000, maybe less, because rental income is taxed differently. Depreciation offsets a huge chunk of it. Expenses are deductible, and if person B sells a property, they can do a 1031 exchange and defer the tax indefinitely. Person A has no equivalent tool. They can't defer their paycheck. They can't depreciate their labor. Every dollar is taxed the year they earn it. Person A works more hours. Person B builds more wealth. Same decade, same system, completely different games. Here's where it gets darker. A lot of high earners know this. They know they're on the treadmill. They know the math doesn't add up. And they feel trapped. Because once you're making $300,000 a year, you can't just quit. You've got a mortgage. You've got kids in private school. You've got a lifestyle you've built around that income. You're locked in. And the only way out is to make more. So you work harder. You take the promotion. You switch firms for a bump. And every time you do, the cycle resets. More income, more taxes, more spending. The treadmill speeds up. You stay in place. And the whole time, you're told you're winning, because that's what high earners are supposed to feel like. Successful, comfortable, secure, just not wealthy. Let's look at the plumber again. $62,000 a year, $2 million in assets. How? He didn't get there by earning more. He got there by spending less and owning more. He bought a house in 2009 when prices crashed, paid it off in 12 years. Bought a duplex in 2015, rented out half, paid it off in 10, bought another property in 2020. Did the same thing. His income barely moved. His net worth exploded because he wasn't playing the income game. He was playing the asset game. And the asset game is slower, boring even. No promotions, no raises, no fancy title. Just compounding, just time. But here's the thing, it works, because assets don't care how hard you work, they care what you own. And once you own enough, they start working for you. Now, here's the question nobody wants to ask. If high salaries don't make you rich, why do we chase them so hard? Part of it is cultural. We're raised to believe that income equals success. The better the job, the better the life. And for a long time, that was true. A good salary meant stability, security, a path to the middle class. But that was when housing was affordable, when college was cheap, when healthcare didn't cost a mortgage payment. The formula worked in a different economy. Today, the math is broken. Housing costs have grown faster than wages for 40 years. Education costs have tripled since the 80s. Childcare in some cities costs more than rent. So even a great salary gets eaten alive by the basics. And what's left over? It's not enough to build real wealth. It's enough to stay comfortable, to stay afloat, but not to get off the treadmill. Let's talk about the big lie. The lie is this: if you work hard, earn well, and save responsibly, you'll be rich. That's what we're told. That's what we believe. And for some people, it's true. If you're disciplined, if you avoid lifestyle inflation, if you invest early and consistently, you can build wealth on a salary. It's possible, but it's not probable. Because the system isn't neutral, it's tilted. And the tilt favors people who own, not people who earn. The high earner has to fight the current. The asset owner flows with it. Here's a thought experiment. Let's say you're making $500,000 a year. You're in the top 1% of earners in America. And let's say you save 20% of that. $100,000 a year. You invest it in index funds. You do everything right. After 30 years with average market returns, you'd have around $8 or $9 million. That's real wealth, life-changing money. But now imagine you're someone who bought a small apartment building in 2010 for $2 million. You put down $400,000. You borrowed the rest. Tenants paid off the mortgage. The property appreciated. By 2025, that building is worth $5 million. You sell it. Do a 1031 exchange. Buy a bigger property. Repeat. By the time the high earner hits $8 million in their brokerage account, the real estate investor is sitting on $20 or $30 million in assets. Same timeline, completely different outcome. And here's the kicker. The real estate investor might have never earned more than $150,000 a year. So what's the takeaway? Is the lesson just don't have a salary? No. That's not realistic. Most people need a paycheck. Most people start with income. The lesson is this: income is the fuel. Assets are the engine. If all you do is earn, you're running the engine on fumes. You can go fast for a while, but eventually you burn out. The people who build real wealth use their income to buy assets, and then they let the assets do the work. It's not sexy. It's not fast, but it's how the math actually works. Here's the uncomfortable part. Most high earners don't want to hear this, because it means admitting that the thing they've optimized their entire life around, the job, the title, the salary, isn't enough. It means recognizing that the doctor making $400,000 is closer to the teacher making $60,000 than she is to the person with $40 million in real estate, in terms of wealth, in terms of financial freedom. And that's hard to accept because it challenges the narrative. It suggests that the system sold us a goal that doesn't lead where we thought. Let's get philosophical for a second. What is wealth, really? It's not about the number in your bank account. It's about time. Wealth is the ability to stop working and maintain your life. It's the gap between your expenses and your passive income. The wider that gap, the wealthier you are. A high salary doesn't create that gap. It just raises both sides. You make more, you spend more, the gap stays narrow. But assets, they widen it because assets generate income without your labor. Every property you own, every dividend you collect, every business that pays you, that's money that comes in whether you show up or not. And when that number exceeds what you need to live, you're free. Not comfortable, not secure, free. Here's the final twist. The system doesn't want you to know this, not in the conspiracy theory way, but in a structural way. The economy needs high earners to keep earning. It needs them to spend, to consume, to take out loans. Because consumer spending drives 70% of the GDP. If everyone stopped buying cars and started buying duplexes, the economy would collapse. So the culture reinforces the income game. Work hard, get promoted, buy nice things, repeat. It's not malicious, it's just the design. And the people who figure out the other game, the asset game, they do it quietly. They don't talk about it at dinner parties. They don't post about it online. They just play differently. So here we are. The doctor in San Francisco is still earning $400,000, still leasing the BMW, still living paycheck to paycheck. And the plumber in Ohio just bought his fourth property. Same country, same rules, completely different strategies. And the gap between them isn't about intelligence or discipline or work ethic. It's about understanding which game builds wealth and which one just feels like it does. Here's the question I'll leave you with. If a good salary doesn't make you rich, what are you actually working for? Security, status, survival? Or are you working to buy time, to build something that outlasts your labor? Because the answer to that question changes everything. It changes how you negotiate, how you spend, how you invest. It changes whether you see your paycheck as the finish line or the starting block. And once you see it that way, you can't unsee it. The system doesn't change. The math doesn't change. But the game you're playing, that can. The doctor is still working. The plumber is still building. And somewhere between them is the truth nobody wants to say out loud. A good salary is a beautiful trap. It feels like winning, right up until you realize you're still running.